Mr. Robert Hammond, thank you for sitting down with us to interview today. Tell me about your time with the Montford Point Marines, and did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted. In 1943, I enlisted in the United States Navy. At that time, I was 17 years old, and I had to get approval from my parents to sign a paper to let me volunteer into the United States Navy. At that time, World War II was flourishing. It was getting worse. And being a young guy at the time, I used to be an air raid warden. And the uniform and all of that kind of, it got to me, and I said, gee, I can have a better role to play in this situation. And at that time, I knew very little about segregation, racism, and ethnic differences. I knew very little about that because lack of exposure, and my education was a little different, and I grew up in the city of Philadelphia. So I enlisted, got my mother's approval, and after twisting her arm, said, if you don't sign the papers, I will. So she did sign. What they did, they sent me to Great Lakes. And that was an experience that I'll never forget, because most of my friends in Philadelphia were people from Italy, Italian extraction, and a lot of my friends, good friends, were Italian young men. And quite a few of them had enlisted into the Navy the same as I did. And what they did, they put us on a train to go to Great Lakes. And the train went down south. When the train got to Washington, D.C., the conductor came through and told me me and the other persons of color had to get out of that car and go into another car because we were down south. Well, we refused to go, and the Italian friend said, well, if he goes, we go. And it was about 30 or 40 of us on that train. So they left us alone. And once the train left Washington, I think it went through Virginia, and then when it got into Ohio, then we didn't have any more trouble, and the train went into Great Lakes. And when it got there, Great Lakes was a segregated naval base. I was sent to Camp Lawrence, which was a boot camp right next door to Camp Robert Smalls. And that's where they sent all the African Americans there. And all my friends went over to their camps, Camp Macbeth or McDuffie, something like that. Sent them over there and just separated us. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all, because here I'm alone now. I don't have any friends. And what in the world's going to happen? And I went through boot camp, 6 weeks of it, of intensive training. It was cold, it was freezing, and I never experienced anything like that, because the way the Navy treated us wasn't too bad, but we did have a warm place. We had a clean bed, we had brand new clothes, we even had medical attention given by the Navy doctors there. And the results of that, we were later on in training, we were given tests. They gave us, I think it was an intelligence test to find out what we knew. I scored 99 on one of those tests. And a lot of guys, they scored above 90. and they decided that they were going to send us to Hospital Corps School at Great Lakes. It was about 21 of us that went to medical corps school there. And it was 9 weeks of training that we had to go through there. And from there, when we graduated, all of us graduated. We made high scores because most of us had finished college. We went to college in the northern cities and we learned science and biology and all of that, which the test was very simple to us because we had all that in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So once we finished, I was sent to the Brooklyn Naval Hospital for further training, for field training, what to do when we got into a situation where there were casualties. And we had to go and render first aid treatment to them, save lives, put tourniquets on and things like that. That's what we learned at the Naval Hospital. And that seemed to be some good training, but the problems occurred when we got to that hospital. They put us to work in the kitchen. And all 21 of us were put to work in the kitchen at that Naval Hospital. And we were there for about a week. And later on, a lieutenant came in and saw the red crosses on our sleeves and wanted to know, what are these? Are you guys corpsmen? We said, yeah, we're corpsmen. And he asked the chief petty officer, what are these men doing here? They're not stewards, mate, they're corpsmen. They belong up on the wards for further training. And he said, we can't send them up there. They'll interact with the white nurses. So the lieutenant said, you get those men up on those wards, you get them up there now, or I'm going to bust you down to their lowest rank.
Wow.
Which was a hospital apprentice second class. So we went up on the wards and we got the training up there.
All 21 Navy corpsmen?
Yeah, we all got it. Now, during that time, some of the men went to Bethesda Naval Hospital for training, and some went, I think they went to Norfolk. They split us up in groups of 7. And 7 went to Norfolk, 7 went to Rhode Island, and 7 stayed there at the Naval Hospital for further training.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, being a corpsman, the Montford Point Marines came into the picture. Now, I knew very little or nothing about black Marines at the time because my mind just couldn't picture a separate Marine Corps. Couldn't picture that in my own mind. And then I thought, well, the Navy has black people in there, but most of those people were stewards' mates, were cooks and bakers. Some of them were flagmen. Some of them were yeomen. But corpsmen, no. We were the first African-American corpsmen in the United States Navy. And the results of that was 7 corpsmen went to the Navy ships. That's where I wanted to go, and go aboard the USS Mason. That would have been an experience. And there was 2 other ships that were manned by all black crew.
Mm-hmm.
And it went into the Atlantic Ocean, went down to into the Caribbean and all up and down the coast. That's where that went. The Mason went across to England and back. And I wanted to go there, but they said, no, you guys are going to the Marine Corps.